The Miami Dolphins have found their next head coach, hiring Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. He becomes the 15th head coach in Dolphins history, and he joins up with his former colleague from Green Bay, John Eric Sullivan, in Miami. The Dolphins did not want to risk him going elsewhere. They get a deal done today. And to me, there's no shock here. The Dolphins always wanted to create a strong relationship, a kind of paired vision between their GM and head coach. I don't think we had that with Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. Remember, Grier was here for multiple head coaches, married into Mike McDaniel, and they tried to work together, but clearly it never really went the way they wanted it to. But with John Eric Sullivan as GM and now Jeff Hafley as head coach, both guys value developing, drafting, and promoting up their own guys rather than going out and making splash trades, making splash signings in free agency. Those things can happen, but you got to start by developing your own young core and building through the draft, and Miami will start to do that with Hafley and Sullivan at the helm. And this is why you subscribe. When breaking news happens, we have you covered. We're also going to be live on the channel reacting to Hafley being the next head coach, so make sure you subscribe and join us for that live show. But let's meet the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins. If you are not aware of who Jeff Hafley is, he is 46 years old. He is originally from New Jersey. He began coaching all the way back in 2001, coaching Division III football, then moves up and actually coaches Albany. So he's been in that northeastern area. He has been a coach in college football as a coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's been the head coach for Boston College. He's been an assistant coach in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers before, then becomes the Packers defensive coordinator in 2024. So he's been there the last 2 years and is now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And I know there are concerns about hiring a first-time head coach, but listen, I do like the fact he has some bit of experience manning the ship, even though it was in Boston College where he didn't have the most success, right? He had 2 years above 500, one 500 year, and a 3-9 season, but Boston College is not an easy place to win. I mean, for crying out loud, Bill O'Brien, who was a very successful NFL head coach with Houston in the 2010s, he is 9-20 in his 2 years at Boston College since taking over for Jeff Hafley in 2024. So I'm not going to blame someone for not being able to have success at BC. That's just a bad program with not a lot of NIL funding. But when you've seen him be highly sought after, right? He had multiple second interview requests. He was a finalist for the Tennessee Titans job. The Raiders wanted a second interview with him. The Cardinals wanted a second interview with him. He is a guy that people believe can absolutely be an NFL head coach. He's been a really good defensive coordinator, having a top half defense in Green Bay in each of the last 2 years. I like Jeff Hafley. Is he my favorite for the Miami Dolphins? No. I've been very open about that. Hafley was number 4 on my candidate list. But I don't want to sit up here and act like this is a bad hire. And I think a lot of Dolphins fans are overreacting. I'm going to choose to be an optimist because we have seen some bad coaching over the last 5 years at this organization. And I think Hafley can be better. Will I guarantee it? No. But there's no reason to be a pessimist about this hire because he has a really good history in the NFL. He has a lot of good connections, and now we'll have to see how he builds his coaching staff. But what is it? One-word reaction to Jeff Hafley being hired as the next Miami Dolphins head coach. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Mine is just solid. I mean, I've talked about it a ton, but I truly do think this is just a solid, good hire. Because when you see as many teams as there were that wanted Jeff Hafley and interviewed him and thought highly of him, I am going to believe this is a very good candidate. I'm not going to try to big brain this and think I'm better than the people running these organizations. Do I think there are decisions that should be questioned? Yes. Do I think there are times where I make a better decision and have a better opinion than some people? Yeah, just like you guys might have that feeling at times. But when there were 6 teams that interviewed Hafley, 4 of these teams wanted second interviews. We already mentioned it: Las Vegas, Arizona, Tennessee, and Miami. How are you going to come to the belief that this is not a legit head coaching candidate? Like, I can't stand the people that actually think the only reason why he is now the Dolphins head coach is because he is buddy-buddy with the GM that got hired, John Eric Sullivan. They did not have a working relationship or a friendship developed until the last 2 years. And I don't even know if Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan are friends. I would have to imagine that they are on really solid terms, or Sully would never have advocated for him to be hired. But like, people acting like these guys have been buddy-buddy and they're just making friends and that's why he's hired, it's ridiculous. Hafley has had a very good track record in his 20-plus years of coaching throughout the NFL and college football. A lot of other people believe this is a really good candidate across the league, and I think Miami Dolphins fans should be happy that the Dolphins hired John Eric Sullivan, because it gave them the inside track to hiring Hafley, who is clearly one of the more valued candidates across this entire cycle in 2026. More coming up here in a second, but we are brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and you don't have a lot of opportunities to get in on the football action where it feels good to be right. Last chance to get in on the football before next season. So close the season out right with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. It's so easy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and you could cash in. We got a lot of new sports, even with football closing in. We got basketball, we got golf, we got hockey, we got baseball coming up in a couple months. You got early payouts, which I really like, because if your players get off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And if you're missing your fantasy football team, well, guess what? You still have one last opportunity to play fantasy football. No draft required in the big game a couple weeks from now. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Today marks a new day for the Miami Dolphins organization. And I am not going to say that Miami is 1,000% going to be better with Hafley and Sullivan at the helm making decisions than it was with the last regime, because it's hard to say I can guarantee that. But can I ask you something real quick, Dolphins fans? Even if you are one of the pessimists with the Hafley hire, can it get any worse? It's not like Miami had any success. They haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. So who cares? Anything might be better than what you've had. In this organization, especially over the last 5 years and decade with Chris Grier at the helm, has consistently whiffed on draft picks, have swung big in free agency, let some of your key players that you drafted and developed leave. A lot of people like to bring up Andrew Van Ginkel, Robert Hunt, Brandon Jones, Deshaun Elliott, just to name a few. Well, guess what? That won't be happening here now. Because if they do hit on draft picks, you know what Hafley and you know what John Eric Sullivan prioritize? Creating a culture, creating a baseline. And you do that by drafting well, developing, and extending those guys. Both of them, Hafley and Sullivan, value that at their very core. You won't see blockbuster trades unless Miami's right there and one piece away. You won't see crazy free agent signings. You'll see your guys staying here, building it, and then supplementing it in free agency with some minor deals here and there. And I know it's not the most flashy thing, but that's how the best teams are built and created. Like, we've already seen John Eric Sullivan talk about this in interviews and on media. But you go back just 2 or 3 years ago to Jeff Hafley talking about what he wanted to do at Boston College. He said, when I got here, my vision when I took this job before the transfer portal and NIL hit was I wanted to bring in guys and develop them. Hopefully keep them for the 5th year. So by the time my guys are in their 5th year, those guys are developed. They know the scheme. There's culture. I believe in the power of the team. We have an aligned vision. I think that is incredibly important, because when your GM and your head coach are in lockstep on how to build a team, how to run a program, it gives you an infinitely higher chance of success. Like I said, I'm not going to guarantee it works and we win a Super Bowl within 5 years. That would be egregious and irresponsible. But will I tell you that I think Miami is set up in a better spot now than they were 365 days ago with Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel at the helm? You know what? I will say that. I can't guarantee they will be better, but I do think Miami is in a better spot because we have a head coach and GM that view football the same way and have an aligned vision. Now it's just all up to see if John Eric Sullivan can walk the talk and if Hafley can actually coach on the sidelines. We know he can have a good top half defense, but can he manage the clock right? Can he have the boys fired up, ready to play? When you hear him speak to the media, he sounds confident. He sounds like he can lead men, but we'll have to see if he can ultimately do it. Be the teacher for me. Grade the hire of Jeff Hafley. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section as we close out today's breaking news here just in a second. I want to use this opportunity to round out the show by saying this. This is the big question. Because I think Hafley's a fine hire. I gave it a B-. That's my grade for it. I think it's solid, not flashy. We'll ultimately see what happens. But the next question that everyone's going to ask, who is the offensive coordinator? Who is the defensive coordinator? What will his staff look like? Well, I have some brief ideas for offense and defensive coordinator, and we'll see more come out here over the next 48 hours. There's a guy that is not listed for defensive coordinator that he worked with at Boston College. The name is escaping me right now. That has been rumored to be a potential DC in Miami. They worked together at Boston College. But I think Anthony Weaver is an interesting name. Weaver and Hafley worked together in Cleveland in 2015. DeMarcus Covington, the Green Bay Packers defensive line coach. He has been a DC before under Gerard Mayo in 2024. That's an interesting name. Mathieu, the Dolphins cornerback coach. Guess what? He's been requested as a DC interview with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I would also look at Daronte Jones, a defensive back coach in Minnesota. No connection between him and Hafley, but he is a rising candidate. And on the offensive side of the ball, Bobby Slowik, who was the pass game coordinator specialist and consultant offensively for Miami this year. Well, guess what? Him and Hafley worked together in San Francisco in 2016, 2017, 28. Slowik was the OC in Houston for 2 years, got the best out of C.J. Stroud. Could he stay in Miami? Possible. He's been requested as the OC for an interview with the Eagles. Steve Shimko, might have botched that, but Cowboys quarterback coach worked together before Steve and Hafley did. And then you have to mention Connor Lewis and a rising quarterback coach in Green Bay, Sean Mannion. Yeah, the former NFL quarterback. He's young, but a rising coordinator in the NFL could potentially get a chance in Miami. These are just some early names to monitor. We will have more on the coordinator search and candidates over the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. But I want to just give some quick hit thoughts on who the OC and DC could be in Miami with Hafley coming on as head coach. Like I said, if you're watching this, we might be live right now, so join us. But we've also had you cover this entire search process, and we will continue to have you covered all offseason long, so subscribe today.